He was crazy. No, that he was one of the most spirited and unique individuals ever.
When I first met him, I thought he was a little cuckoo.
They let somebody loose from the 9th floor or the 10th floor from the psych ward.
I didn't believe he was a doctor.
I thought he was a mean old man.
Fear.
I was very scared.
Yeah, he was an intimidating character at first. You know, when you first met him.
He was loud.
Very loud, very direct, but mostly very loud.
Every Friday morning for most of my fellowship, almost 2 years, I did all of Bill's cases with him. So Bill trained me to do D&E, and up until the time he asked me to cover his patients, I assumed he thought I was an idiot.
My first impression of him was that all the right things came out of all the wrong ways.
I think I had been pre-warned by some of my senior residents that he made an interesting first impression. In fact, I think the words little troll had been used.
He didn't make the best first impression, but he probably had the best lasting impression.
He's a little rough around the edges. He is the kind of person that you might think wouldn't be a very friendly and open sort of person. And it takes some time to get to know him to understand what a warm and genuinely wonderful personality he had.
I mean, obviously he was like an inside joke. And some people got it, and some people didn't get it. And if you didn't get it, then he was a very terrifying person.
I think what was clear that he was a bit of a character with a firm conviction in terms of what he was doing, and a determination that come what may, he was going to do what he wanted to do.
He just was a rough guy, and deep down he had a heart of gold.
He was visually fabulous, a character of his own self, the eyebrows, the blue eyes, his stature, his voice, his bow ties.
I think probably the most unique characteristic was his unbelievable sincerity and authenticity in approaching everyone he ever interacted with.
His ability to truly take care of patients in every possible way. And we don't have people who are trained to be doctors that way anymore.
He had an unapologetic bigness to him that many people doing our sort of work might feel that they have to be a little more political, and he never took that approach.
He was driven and yet very generous, demanding and generous.
And he was always teaching. Even if you had done, 50 D&Es with him, he was always quizzing you about how big was the uterus, how many weeks of gestation does this foot length correspond to?
His love of research was matched by his love of education. I think Bill was happiest when he would teach young residents, young fellows, procedures.
In the OR, the screaming, where exactly the way? Right.
And even when you did it right, you didn't know, because he'd scream, "Who taught you to do that? That way?" Well, you did. Good!
Right.
And it took me a while to realize that verbal abuse and sometimes physical abuse was his way of giving positive feedback and showing that he cared.
Then I complained about how he made a mess in my room. He took off his gown and on his knee cleaned up my floor. That's what really, really impressed me a lot.
Not only did we learn to love him, but you could see that his patients loved him. No matter how he yelled at them, because we would screams when he would yell at them, and you would think that the patient would start crying and boohooing. They knew he meant business. And what he was telling them was in their best interest.
He didn't violate the law, but he pushed it to its outer limits. And to me, that's good.
It was really an education to watch him work, whether it was, taking that woman with a difficult cervix and flipping her upside down so that her butt was in the air and putting the speculum in upside down and struggling, but not accepting defeat. That, yes, I can complete this procedure, or having a screaming fight with a colleague over their unwillingness to allow a procedure to go forward. He just really was inspiring.
He used to take care of some very young girls that were really victims of horrible crimes. And that was the time you'd really see the compassion, not only in his eyes, but in his movements, his gentleness.
I felt comfortable. And I felt that he wanted me to feel comfortable, that it wasn't bedside manner. There was only one thing that bothered me. Almost 50 years of hearing the same punchline.
That might have been the first time I met him. Is walking into Van Etten, and he was peeing in a scrub sink, and he turned around and he said something to the effect of, "Who the fuck are you?" And I'm like, "I'm your new resident." And he's like, "Come over here," and I had no idea what he wanted me to do.
I think my favorite day was that he was asked not to come to work on the day that Joint Commission, the state looks at the rules of hospital administration. So he was asked not to come to work that day. So of course he waltzed in the door right when the state had come to the clinic in order to get everyone's feathers ruffled, and came right up to me and said, "I think I have to go to the bathroom." So then he would pee in the sink when the state was there.
And here he comes down the hall, and he was typical Bill fashion. His bow tie was undone, his shirt was half unbuttoned, he has this face mask that he wears in the OR that was on his head and protruding out that way, and he had a leash with 2 small dogs on it. And he comes into my office here, giving me the leash, and as he runs out the back door, he said, "I was paged to the OR." And soon after he left, the security man came in, and these were dogs, and they couldn't be here. And I thought, he doesn't know Bill. The dogs stayed.
The hospital police was escorting him out of here, and everyone was dying laughing. Dying, and that was him. That was it. To do the unexpected, something that you and I wouldn't even think about doing.
I had a poor medical student who was on her very first clinical rotation and had really, her eyes kind of protruded a little bit. And when he saw her, he took one look at her and he said, "Is that exophthalmos genetic, or do you have hyperthyroidism?"
He took me out to lunch once, a small bar across the street from the hospital. He offered me a ride back to the hospital, but I wanted to walk. It was a beautiful day, and it's a large lawn. I'm walking across the lawn, and I hear a noise behind me. And turn around, and he's in his car. He'd driven up on the lawn, followed me, and was trying to run me over.
He stopped the car in the middle of the merging highway into the FDR, rolled down his window, the passenger side window, leaned over and started shouting at this cop, saying, "On the side of your car it says CPR, courtesy, professionalism, and respect, and I see none of that here today."
One of the first couple of times I worked with him, Dr. Rashbaum had a fist fight with Ed Savagian from anesthesia, who no longer works here, in the operating room over a gas that the anesthesiologist wanted to use and Rashbaum didn't want him to use. And Dr. Rashbaum punched him. He went back at him. The patient was on an arm board. Her arm was tied on an arm board. The arm board fell off. I thought for sure that the patient dislocated her shoulder. They had the fight in the room. Ed Savagian walked out. Thank God nothing happened to the patient. The patient was now crying, looking at me, saying, "Please don't let them fight over me." And when it was all over, after the case, I got called in the office later that day by my boss, Bridget Minahan, who said to me, "Margaret, what happened in the room?" And I looked her dead in the eye and said, "I have no idea. I was at the autoclave getting something out."
I guess we could have gotten in trouble, but we felt so protected with him over the years.
Some of them I can't tell. Some of them are so outrageous I really can't tell.
He embraced us so much. I mean, not only the patients, but us. And he took care of us through everything, through sickness and even death in our families. He was always there. His numbers was given out to call him whenever, especially me, whenever I needed him. And he just was wonderful. He just was wonderful.
He encouraged me. He gave me the will. When I was almost near losing that will to go on, he inspired me. And I love him for that.
I said, I'll call him. Called him up. He says, Joe, get me an hour and I'll be there. Got him an hour, called him back. He came right in. And not only did he take such wonderful care of my friend, he waited and he offered to take me home. And for that, I'll always remember him.
One young woman early on said that she was suicidal because she was pregnant and didn't want to be. And I didn't know what to do. And I was new to the clinic, didn't know what resources were. And I pulled him aside and conferenced it with him. And he said, give me 15 minutes. And at the end of 15 minutes, he came back to me and said, I've worked it out. You need to call one of our affiliates and they will pay for her to get on a plane and go where she needs to go to get what she needs to get done. So within 15 minutes, he changed this woman's life.
She was 13, maybe 14 years old, and he went over to a cabinet, which I had never noticed before, and pulled out a teddy bear, which was a stuffed animal. They had a collection of them for pediatric patients, and he handed it to her. And I thought that was so incredibly sweet because he had held on to the idea of her as a child, which she completely was, despite the fact that she was there for a, mid-trimester abortion.
He called people the night of a termination to make sure that they were okay. He made sure that patients' husbands came with them because it was something that was important for both of them. And when the patient's husband didn't come with them, he would call the husband and say, she really needs you. You should be here.
There were times when things didn't always work out. And you sit down and you could see that he was hurting inside. That was the emotion that came out that I think was what made him such a great person, a great doctor, but also a person, a real human being.
If you asked any of us at the beginning, would Bill Rashbaum be the guy that, is your mentor or your hero or your friend? We would have been like, no.
That one of the ways he was so inspirational to me was that he taught me that you should not look at anything as impossible.
When I think back to my training, there's really only one person that I think of as having actually trained me to do something.
He really was dedicated to passing on his knowledge. And I think that's the best gift somebody can give.
No, but you still hear his voice in the OR when you're doing a case, no matter what, he's with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Over your shoulder on every case.
Watching. And you always say to yourself, am I doing it right? And you listen for that voice. Silverstein, what are you doing?
Over the years, what I came to appreciate most about him was his sense of empathy and the strength of that empathy for his patients. He saw the social injustices and the disparities in our society that brought so many women to his door. And he felt very strongly that as physicians and as individuals, we all have a responsibility to try to change things. And he reminded all of us, in our daily activities with him, of that responsibility that we all have.
Before Dr. Rashbaum was there, those patients went through labor and had to deliver basically babies, which were, obviously it was a termination, but it was a horrible experience to go through labor for a termination of pregnancy. And after he came to New York Hospital, they went to sleep and woke up having terminated, which was a much more humane experience.
I owe him sort of my career, and I think many women will be able to have safe procedures because of him, because of people that he trained who will train others and continue the tradition and continue the safety and the procedure as it should be done.
No, my patient too. I mean, she said, I'm only here today with my 2 kids because of him.
Right.
And,
yeah, they understood. Right, they understood that it's because he was so good at what he did that gave them the opportunity to have healthy children.
I think the people need to remember that above all, this was an advocate for abortion rights who believed with all his heart that women had the right to make choices about their bodies. And he not only believed it, which a number of people do, he did something about it with his whole life.
I said, well, you're not just going to turn around and give up. And he said, no, I'm going to continue to fight for women. And, that was 2 days before he died. He wanted to continue to fight for women. Pretty amazing.
I think he leaves his family with the knowledge that they had somebody very special for a period of time, and that he touched so many people and helped so many people in the course of his life.
Gruff little teddy bear.
Rambunctious.
He's in a class by himself.
I mean, he really was a doctor.
You know.
I mean, doctor
Yeah,
is,
doctor's probably
doctor
the right
means
word.
teacher, and it is, that's who he was.
Can't think of a single word to describe Bill Rashbaum.
A charmer.
Absolutely insanely insane.
Gregarious.
Boisterous. Larger than life, I think, is really who Bill Rashbaum was.
He's a character, I would say.
That I couldn't. Commitment.
Passionate.
He was passionate, courageous, stubborn, irascible, completely delightful, really funny. A piece of work.
I think it's compassionate.
I'd say grandfatherly.
Yeah. He was timeless.
A decent, honorable guy.
A real champion of the underdog.
Truthful, I think.
To me right now, my heart.
It's hard to do it in one word. He's a complex person.
Well, he was real.
Well, he was my hero.
Impossible. I mean, the question's impossible to answer, and probably impossible is the answer.
He's touched so many thousands of people, but, you feel special because you were one of them.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Great.